Howdy. How are we? Daddy's back. I got a little bit sick. Pardon my absence. I know it is inexcusable. I will be better next time. But I did drag myself out of bed because today's reading is a doozy. I'm feeling very confused. And so I'm sensing a lot of you are in heavy confusion energy right now, especially rather recently, or you're just now getting out of confusion. Something on the axis, on the spectrum of confusion, is really being highlighted. There's something here about the confusion and your confidence, your ability to discern something here. Confusion is affecting something. And so really this just looks like someone who's been in a confused state, ongoing, just getting out of a confused state, but something here affected confidence. On the other end of this, if you felt more clarity lately, this also might apply to you. So this is just really a rather specific reading involving what looks like a person who sees very clear patterns. This is not a reading for someone who sort of easily accepts outcomes and moves on. This is for someone who thinks, who rethinks, who thinks again. Long after situations have passed, they are processing deeply. This is for you. It is important I'm clear about that, and that there is two types of energy signatures that directly conflict with each other. There's someone who quickly accepts and moves on. They move through uncertainty. They find certainty in that way. And then there's you, who I'm talking to, who this reading is for. And you're the type that retroactively thinks. From an energy standpoint, you move things around, especially if you're actively involved in hindsight and reflection. This hindsight about the past is important here because, like I said, there are people who don't move energy around. There are people that passively accept it and they move through it. And then there's you. And you tend to move it around. And it's important I explain that to you because you might be under the interpretation that you are stuck in something, when in reality, you cannot see that you're simply moving things around from an energy standpoint. You just don't move forward in things. You move things forward, if that makes sense. This is important because there's another thing here being moved by you, a sort of energy that you're attached to or that's attached to you. And with this ability to move things around, it's causing a discomfort here with this other thing, this other person. This is especially true if you feel you are toggling between being very certain, being very clear, and then being very uncertain. There's something about that extreme toggle in relationship to this person here, this thing attached to you. This toggle here is showing you that you're moving things in real time. It's not showing you that you're stuck on something. And so I think this reading is going to sort of explain what's moving around in an invisible way, what you are directing, what you are actually doing, and this rebalancing here that's happening between the two of you. Because it seems you need some clarity on this. It seems you're getting confused about what's actually happening based on the extremeness of this confusion. And so to summarize, if uncertainty and certainty are the main emotional states here for you, if they are extreme, if they are toggling back and forth a lot, welcome to your reading, my loves. Okay, so first off, it's important to explain to you what is moving around and what moving energy around actually means. Unlike others who accept and move through things to find clarity and certainty, you are moving things around yourself. And that might seem opposite because what's happening in the physical is these other people are moving and you are not. So you would assume you're not moving things, but actually from an energy standpoint, you are moving everything. And so I guess the best way to explain this to someone who cannot see energy is this is sort of done, I guess, with your mind, or I guess it's reflected in your mind processing things extremely. It's not just intellectual. You aren't just like thinking about things. You're processing, you're moving energy around as you're doing so. And so this confusion you feel is tied. It's directly tied to you moving energy around. It's your signal that you're doing so. It's very important you understand that first and foremost. Confusion is tied to you sort of moving things around. This could be shown in like states where you're not really struggling with confusion. That would be your signal that you are not moving energy around a lot at that point. But very extreme, emotional, confusing times, you are directly moving energy around. And that's very important. I stress that to you so you can understand. In other words, the more confused that you feel, the more energy you are working through, you are working on. Confusion is your guide, your signal to what you are working through on an energy level. And that's very important. I say that and re-say it and say it again. If you're familiar with transmutation, this is sort of what I'm talking about here, but this is more specific to relationship dynamics. It's more specific to how you process relational dynamic energy. And I'll talk about that more, I think, because it's kind of layered. So because you are moving energy around, you sort of feel stuck in the past. You are processing things longer than what logically feels acceptable. And I think this is because most people move through uncertainty. They sort of move to find certainty, as where you are moving energy around to find your certainty. You don't move through it. It sort of happens over time with you, much slower process, but you are sort of like actively guiding energy around in the process. The only way that energy moves for you is like this. It's sort of backwards. I think that's why it's confusing and most people misinterpret it, is we really truly understand clarity found through movement for the most part. And so it's not really highly discussed to sort of create clarity as an energy mover, but that's what's happening for you. I can see that very clearly. So if you can really understand, there's two really distinct energy signatures. There's those who just accept the energy as is and they move forward. They don't get caught up in processing feelings, thoughts, nothing like that, understanding. They just move and then they find their clarity. It's not because you're weaker that you need to do that. It's in fact that you are actually moving energy around for you. You're directing it yourself. So that's why you're not moving forward at this time. That is why confusion, that is why you're processing. You are sort of this energy director here. You move the energy yourself. You don't move with it. This is, in a sense, why it takes you longer to process. This is why you are mentally doing gymnastics about things. You are finding clarity, sorting through invisible energy. You are moving it around. And most people find clarity through action first. They don't move anything around. They just move and then clarity comes to them. They're sort of moving with the energy. This person here, the one that this reading is sort of focused on here, you'll know who I'm talking about. This sort of relationship between the two of you lasted a while because of this confusion energy. Confusion energy is very, very highlighted here. Very important. The confusion that you felt with them was sort of showing you how you absorbed and processed things for them on an invisible level. And it kept you there a while because it wasn't your own energy. With your own energy over time, the confusion sort of processes into clarity. But with someone else's energy, you cannot work through it. It keeps looping. It's not your own energy. You cannot find clarity with that. You can only take it on. And so that's why nothing ever gets solved or sort of resolved. It's just energetically, you're taking on something you cannot complete and you're pausing your own cycles. That's the best way I could describe that. It's not like you're over functioning though. I'm being kind of shown an example, I guess, because this is kind of a complicated thing we're talking about here. It's invisible. A lot of you get mad when I say the word pseudoscientific, as if pseudoscientific means that it's not credible. In my mind, pseudoscientific does not mean it's discredited. It just means there's nothing that we can put evidence to explaining what it is. That's what this is, as I'm talking about very invisible things here. The best way I could describe this is what I'm being shown, is the body. Okay, a very specific example here with the body. If you are familiar with the process of autophagy is where the body stops focusing on digestion and starts working on cellular repair. Don't get bored. I'm not going to be a science teacher. Just hear me out. But the body cannot work on cellular repair while it is digesting food. So you have sort of a fasted and a fed state. Some of you probably will be super familiar with this, I'm sure. And some of you maybe not. But the reason I'm being shown autophagy is this is exactly what a mirror of what was happening for you on an energy level with this person. You were constantly digesting for them. And now you're finally pausing digestion and you're able to sort of work on what's accumulated, this sort of like gunk in your body. You're able to sort of do the cellular repair that you should have been doing, but you had to pause to work through their energy. And so this first part is kind of explaining to you how important confusion is to you. Number one, confusion is telling you that you are working through an invisible thing, both in yourself and in another person. Confusion will be your primary emotion, your primary signal. They are the same in both instances, whether you're working through your energy or theirs or something separate. The difference is one will resolve and the other one doesn't. So you may have felt confused working through digestion in their energy, and you may feel confused while you're working on your own, but that confusion is still your primary emotion. So what your guides, what Spirit is trying to say here is confusion is not a signal something is wrong. It's actually a signal you're doing something important right now. In both instances, which I'll explain when you're working on someone else's. But right now, just know confusion is actually kind of a good sign. That's what I'm being shown. So your team, they want to draw a pretty important connection here because this is how you are. You are not going to change how you're wired. You have to accept how you are wired in a way. You will keep doing this throughout your life, especially during high evolving periods. Evolving stages will have a lot of confusion for you. And that is your confirmation that you are sort of working through this invisible energy. You are doing a lot more than you know. You're not in a stuck situation. You're doing something invisible at that time, especially high peaks of confusion. Those are very important. And I think this is coming to you, this message is because you're interpreting confusion as sort of indicating something negative. And your team really wants to clarify this, especially as you're evolving in this larger state right now. Confusion is going to be a primary feeling. And that's actually a good sign, a very good sign. And I think this next part is going to talk about digesting other people's energy because, you're going to feel confusion in both instances. But since you're wired to move this way, it's important you understand both instances. So this next part, we'll talk about them and when you're digesting someone else's energy and not your own and what that means. Believe it or not, I am not a medical or health professional. So I will put a little disclaimer here for this message that just came through. It may be very beneficial for you at this time to fast, to gain clarity through your confusion with your physical body. In the past, I've gotten a lot of hurts messages, but this one is actually encouraging fasting. So there's sort of a physical healing mechanism or an aid here with fasting. Confirmation if you are already doing something like this, or if you've been thinking about it, or it's been on your mind, or something of that nature. But if not, there is a connection here between fasting and your confusion, or how you're working through that at this time. There's more clarity that can arrive quicker. But again, I'm not a doctor. Always consult a doctor before doing something like that. You don't need to fast to reach clarity also. It just might help the process move faster from what I'm seeing here. Okay, so this part of the message seems involved in this person, okay? Their regret, what's happening for them as you are working on your backlog, on your confusion now. It's clear you've spent a majority of your time here working through their confusion, their energy. But now you've shifted towards working through your own. You are working on this backlog, what's accumulated. You're in this autophagy state. During separation, this could have started or during an internal shift of some kind that you experienced on your own. The backlog you had to pause while you're with them is now being sorted through. And that's why you could feel more confusion than you did with them, not just working through these smaller cycles of their own. You're sort of working on much larger things that have accumulated. Think of pausing something and then just having a bunch of, mail come into your inbox that you haven't begun to start sorting through. And now you have like a million unread messages. That's what I'm kind of being shown here to explain this. If we went back to the body example, to this autophagy example that keeps coming through, is like energetically, you spent a long time paused with this energy, working on loops that you could not complete. And the body can't focus on other functions while it's digesting something else. And the same is true while you're with them. It's like a direct mirror of the situation. So they seemed to rely on you to digest for them, not consciously, but as a result, you couldn't work through what was accumulating in the background for you. Before anything changed externally, it looks like there was a huge split here in the timeline, almost like a moment of total consciousness where you became aware that you were pausing your own cycles. Maybe not consciously that way, but Energy began rebalancing once you realized you were holding something that you shouldn't have been. Even if it wasn't directly conscious, there was a moment of consciousness. And so in the external, I see that you didn't have to do anything different. The confusion just returned to sender in a way. You started working through your own at a very specific point. You might remember an exact point where you started feeling an intense confusion, like it spiked or had started having extreme ups and downs. And that was when you stopped working on this person's energy and sort of returned it to sender. Something important that wants to be noted here is it's not as simple as just exiting or realizing something and then it just shifting immediately. You're working through what looks like a lot of buildup here. But the moment you became somewhat conscious of what you were holding is when this timeline split open. And so on this person's side, they were sort of used to offloading confusion onto you. You would work through that confusion, you would pause your own system as a result, but they never really had to feel confusion because they weren't working on their own or yours. So the moment your consciousness shifted, they started to feel the backlog of their confusion as well. And so this is what's really important is it's more intense for them. They're not the type of person that moves energy around like you. And so it might feel more overwhelming to them because they're not sort of sorting through the inbox like you are. The person like this person who relied on you to digest their confusion, when you leave, they aren't the archetype to move things around like you. So their buildup is almost too painful to face. And so they develop sort of like avoidant tendencies, as where you actively kind of like face your confusion and digest it. Most people do not do what you do. It's not as common as you may think to process energy like this, sort of move it around. So what I see from an energy standpoint is like it was sort of a temporary relief for them, sort of like dopamine or mindless scrolling. It never completed the loop. You never could do anything with the energy. It kept you unable to process your own energy and it kept them unable to process their own energy. Both of you were in a perpetually paused state. So I see one of the main messages here from your guides is really highlighting this confusion energy that you're working through. That's really prominent here. It's important you pay attention to when you are at peaks of confusion, because this process of confusion is how you find clarity. Your guides want you to pay attention to confusion because they want you to know when you are working on energy invisibly. But they also want you to know that being a type of person who moves energy around and processes through confusion, this draws you to potential energy more than kinetic energy. Potential energy is usually high in people who are in transitional states where they aren't stable. So the confusion energy exists at the peak for both of you during these relationships, and it especially existed inside of this dynamic I see here. You think while you're in it, you're solving something. This confusion keeps you in these incomplete loops. But what actually is happening is like the confusion never subsides. The confusion is the relationship, is the reason you're here. It's the potential energy. And so it's actually the confusion that is pushing both people to change, almost like a catalyst relationship. It is purposeful, like both being in paused spaces to accumulate this backlog energy of some kind. If you didn't accumulate this backlog that you have right now, or they didn't, nothing would shift. Nothing would push you to do anything different. And so it's almost intentionally orchestrated by your guides, the universe, higher powers, higher selves, where they want you to accumulate your energy on a backlog. They know that the dynamic together will have both of you pause. So you're sort of in this paused dynamic so you can build energy in the background, because the only way that things build in the background or get a accumulation or a backlog is through this paused cycle where you both can't focus on your own energy. And you might think it's like a problem, like it's something you need to work on. No, your guides specifically pushed you both together to create this backlog, to create this accumulation in both of you. So you have really important messages today, okay? The first one is you need to be aware that you are susceptible to potential energy because of how you move energy around. Because you process confusion in yourself, in other people, and in other energy, you are drawn to people in transitional states. to people with high potential and peak energy. And the reason you're drawn to that is because to some degree, you are wanting to evolve as well. Your higher self is pushing you to evolve as well. So these transitional people with high potential that you're finding are actually key to your evolving process, and you are key to theirs. It's just the difference here is they might actively avoid the backlog because it's overwhelming to them because they cannot move energy around like you. And you're more equipped to deal with the backlog because you are actively moving energy. But both parties are intentionally being pushed to build a backlog of energy, to build an accumulation because your guides, your higher self want to push you into something. It's not just purposeless pain. It's here for a divine reason. It happened. It was orchestrated. It wasn't random. The second thing is you moving energy around is critical to your life path. It's critical that you accept that fully and you hear it today to some degree. You might not have been in a space in the past to fully accept that confusion is a good sign, and you're actually able to hear it today. You're actually able to hear that you don't take action to find clarity, that you sit in this sort of invisible energy to find clarity. You're sort of moving energy around. And this difference isn't supported because it's not understood. Most people don't find clarity like you. A very small percentage of people process confusion, move energy around. Most people just move to find clarity. I need to say that many times because it's important, I guess. So I think your message today is pretty layered, right? There's a very direct thing that's coming through. It's trying to reframe your thought. Spirit is saying something very specific here. You were trying to solve the relationship, but the relationship only existed because it could not be solved. Very specific. And it is precisely that confusion, that inability to be solved, that created this necessary backlog for both of you that was divinely pushing you, that is divinely pushing you both to grow. Without this backlog of energy, you wouldn't be pushed into a threshold moment. People aren't pushed until they have an accumulation of something. And so you need that accumulation. That pausing is not bad. It's the normal cycles of fasting and being fed and fasting and being fed. So your team wants you to see that this wasn't pointless. Your team wants you to see that your confusion is not harming you and that these things have a divine purpose and that you're ready to actually hear that today, that it happened in a very intentional and orchestrated way. All right, I'm kind of sick, but I'm still going to prolong my goodbye. I do not want to say goodbye. This little prolonged space. I mean, I used to do salt talks and then I got burnt out, and here we are still missing you guys and still wanting to keep talking, but trying to preserve energy so I can still keep doing readings. I just use this time to basically tell the newcomers, the newbies, thank you for sticking it out to my weirdness. Do you like it here? How do you feel? Tell me about your feelings. But more importantly, let me just give you the rundown because it's a little bit different here. I'm the type of reader that works through communicational energy. So in this community, we call it nudges. A nudge is essentially the communicational energy you send to me. And the reason I ask for nudges is because it helps me channel more efficiently. I sort of am able to find the more critical messages and make sure they go out in a divine timing sense. And I can be very specific, as you can see here. It's no coincidence that I'm insanely detailed. That's because I have a community of people that just nudge the shit out of me. Anyway, I think that's it. Just wanted to let you guys know that I love you dearly. I will rest up so I can do more readings. And if you're sick or you're just getting over being sick or there's some sort of sick connection that runs between both of us, we'll get through this. I love you guys dearly. So, so, so dearly. A ridiculous dear amount. The most dears probably that exist. Cheers, friends.